Okay, so we are here today for a super fun hand sewing project. We're going to make these cute pencil pouches. This is all hand sewn, so it's really a fun, creative way. It has a little button, and we're going to even make a buttonhole. This one, my 5-year-old made, and she did a llama. And then on the back side, or the front side, whatever, she hand stitched some hearts. So she just got to add whatever she wanted up here. If you buy this as a kit, you will have the pieces all cut out. So this is the llama. So you're going to have the white llama, the tiny little nose, and then the saddle part. You can see that. And then you will have 2 pieces for the main part of the pouch, and then 1 piece for the pocket. So we only have 1 lining piece, so what this is going to be, this teal color is the main piece, and we're going to line it with the blue, and then we'll make a pocket, like that, and then we'll also give you a button, so you can add a button to that. So this is kind of how it's all going to go together, and then you can choose to either put the llama on the button side, or on the front side, back side, whatever, however you want to look at it. You can put it on either side. The other option is the same, where you have this is Peyton's, you're going to have the 2 main pieces and then the pocket piece, and then she chose to do the dog. So we're going to have a little tiny ear, and then the collar piece right here, just tiny, and then the little dog, and then I used a marker to draw the little black nose on already. So that's what you'll have. And then a button as well. So we need to go grab our button still, but we will get that. Anyway, so we're going to start with hand sewing. And you can either start by hand stitching your little animal on, or if you do want to add a decorative, spot on that, you can start with that. So girls, you want to start maybe with our decorative stitching first?
Yeah.
Okay. So with this one, you can kind of see we did a back stitch, which is a really great one when you're doing curves and stuff. The other option would be to do a running stitch. A back stitch takes a little bit more thread, maybe a little bit more time, but it's kind of intended to look like one continuous line, whereas a running stitch looks more like a dashed line, right? In, out, in, out. So I think Peyton wanted to do, we're going to do 2 hearts?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to draw 2 hearts on hers. Braylon, what are you going to do with yours?
Write words.
Braylon's going to write words on hers. So Braylon's probably going to do a back stitch for sure, because with the words it looks a little bit better with all those curves. Peyton, what are you going to do, a back stitch or a running stitch?
I'll do a back stitch.
Back stitch? Alright, so what we're going to do is first get started. Do you want to do, and you have to decide if you're going to do it on which piece you're going to do it on. So do you know where you want to do your words? On this bigger part? Okay, so Braylon's going to do it same as ever we did right here, and then Peyton, what about you? Same? Alright, so we're going to get started by threading our needle first, okay? So your kit will include a needle that's on a little piece of felt. So pick your thread that you want to use for the writing. Same thing for you, Miss Peyton. We're going to put these little cutouts off to the side for right now. Okay, so you're going to do which one? For your words, or for your hearts. Alright, so Peyton's going to do the pink thread for her words. Now, like I said, when we do a back stitch, it takes a little bit more thread, which is totally fine. I would recommend still doing the same length that we usually do, which means we're going to kind of just drag it out to our arm and kind of work with that. So we're going to keep it at that same length, so it's easier to work with. And then we may have to add more thread as we're sewing. We're going to grab some scissors and a marker, so I'll be right back. Okay, so we actually had to go and get a couple of supplies because, sometimes I'm not always prepared. But, like I mentioned, for the thread, we were just going to cut it the length of our arm. So go ahead and cut that off. We are working on doing our hand sewing videos that will be available soon. I'm going to go over the details of this, but also in your kit, there is a guide for the hand stitching. So this will go over how to tie a knot and the different stitches in more detail as well. But with our knot, we're just going to tie it 3 times in the same spot. So I'm going to wrap it around my fingers and do a loop. Tuck the tail. Okay. Now I mentioned in every hand sewing video that I prefer to just keep it with one string while we're sewing, so that way if we have any mistakes we can easily correct it. But the other option is to wait to tie your knot until after you thread it, and then you can tie the 2 ends together. So for example, probably should have cut that in, but we'll see if I can get it. See how long it takes. Alright, so like I said, I already knotted this end over here, so when we sew it, we're just going to sew it like that, where you're going to have one end kind of just hanging. The other option though is to bring down both ends together right here and knotting those ends together, and then you would have 2 strands while you're sewing. But we're going to just keep it as a single strand. And then Braylon, did you already thread yours?
Yes.
And did you knot it already as well?
Yes.
Perfect. So Braylon's good to go. Braylon is going to use a fabric marker to write her words. So she's going to say llama drama, drama llama. So she's going to use a fabric marker to write it on there, so that way she will have a stitch line to kind of guide. And these are washable with water. So these are great tools to have for this. And then for Peyton, she's going to do 2 hearts. I cannot free hand draw whatever a heart very well, so I'm going to use a piece of paper and just make my own. Another option is always to just print it out on the computer and use that as kind of a stencil. So we'll just kind of cut some hearts and see if it's close to the size that she wants, because I don't know what she wants. Alright, so here's one heart, and you're going to put it on the purple. So if you want to kind of position that, we talked about maybe doing one bigger one and one smaller one.
Mm-hmm.
Is that too big, or is that a good size?
Like it.
Okay, so that's a good size. And then we're going to just make one a little bit smaller. Oops, I don't like that heart, so we're going to try again. You guys can all probably cut hearts much better than I do. I don't know why I'm not letting Peyton just do it by herself, because she could probably do it better. There's a smaller heart, like that. Alright, so when we're positioning this on, I do want you guys to keep in mind that we are going to have a stitch line along the edge here. So you don't want to get it too close to the edge, so that way when you're stitching it, kind of like you can see on Emily's here, that your stitch line is going to be just about 1/4 of an inch in. So leave room for that. Hey guys! Okay, so we are back. The girls almost finished their designs that they had been working on. So it's a brand new day. We're going to finish this off. So really quick, first, a couple of things I wanted to show you. First, Peyton was doing the double hearts here, and she's running out of thread. So I just wanted to kind of show you guys, because this might happen, especially if you do a back stitch, because it takes a lot more thread than a running stitch. So sometimes you run out of thread. So what we're going to do is grab a pair of scissors. Now, one thing to note, Peyton is doing 2 strands of thread right here. They're kind of looped together. I don't know if you can see that, but the tail of the thread ended up getting stuck in one of her stitches, so it doubled up. So in order to get the needle off, I have to cut it, which is fine. I'm just going to set that off to the side. So now I just have the thread right here. I'm going to grab a new string of thread, and we're just going to knot it on the back. Okay, so I'm just going to knot it close to the fabric on the back side. Just whatever kind of knot you can do. I kind of like to knot it as if I'm tying a shoestring. Okay, so I'm going to knot it 3 times because I like number 3. Just kidding. So we're going to knot it 3 times. And now, since this is the back side and it is going to get covered actually with a lining fabric, I'm not too worried about the strings. So I'm just going to cut off the loose ends here. So just make sure you're cutting the loose tails and not the long piece. So now we have a long piece of string that we can thread, and she can just start going you know, just where she left off, and then the knot of the thread that we just tied will be in the back. So now she can just continue on with her back stitch. I don't know if you can see her line. We have it in white chalk, but she's just going to continue on with her back stitch, pulling it out, and then continuing. Okay, so she'll continue working on that. And then for Braylon, she has finished her, it says Drama Llama. It's backwards because of the recording thing, but I'm going to show you how to knot this off. So she was able to do it all in one piece of string. So now we have this leftover string hanging, and I do still have the needle on because that's the easiest way to do it. So I will go ahead and show you how to knot that off while Peyton finishes her stitch. Okay, so I have this, we're looking on the back side, move that out of the way. What I'm going to do is take my thread, I'm going to loop it through, I'm going to try to just grab a tiny little bit of that felt and just go underneath here. And while I'm looping it, I'm going to pull this out so you can see. So I'm going to do this until there's a, oh, it's twisted, a loop right there, okay? And then I'm going to take the needle and thread it through that loop, and we're just going to pull it. And I'm just going to keep doing this a couple of times. So I would do it, you know, I like to do it like 3 times. So now I'm just kind of going over that same spot where we just made a knot. Just going to loop it through and pull it. Oh, just do it one more time. Loop it through. Once there's a loop, I'm just going to take my needle right through the loop and pull it. So now at this point, one quick way to finish this off is I'm going to take my needle. I'm going to go just through a tiny bit of the felt. Felt is pretty thick, so it's kind of easy to only go through half of it. So I'm sticking my needle through. I do like to turn it around. Okay, I can kind of see that needle, so I'm going to try again. I'm going to try to just go through just a tiny bit of it. Turn around, and there it's clear. So I'm just kind of pinching through the top layer. I'm going to pull it to kind of pull that thread. I'm going to take the scissors and cut that. So now the thread is kind of tucked underneath that felt, and you can't see it at all from the front side. So that's how you tie off the knot. Okay, so now that we have the hand stitching done, the decorative stitching that they embroidered, right? Now it's time to add our llama or the puppy. So whichever one that you chose in your kit is going to be there. So we're going to first start with just the body without any of the embellishments on it. This curved part right here is the top, and the squared off part is the bottom. So it's kind of squared off and it has rounded edges, and then the top part, it has a dip down. Okay, so this is the top, and this is going to be the bottom. You want to position your little cutout wherever you want. And like I said, if you were doing it on the big piece instead, same thing, the curved part up here is the top, the squared off part here is the bottom, and you could position it on that piece. This part is going to flap over like that, so you'll probably want to do it on the lower 2/3 of it. But so you're going to position it where you want it. So girls, go ahead and do that really quick. We're going to use some pins. Now the nice thing about the felt is it doesn't slide around too badly, so you probably don't need a ton of pins, but we'll just put one pin in there just to kind of keep it where you want it. Oh, the other thing that I'm going to note, in the little dog, I did use a little black marker to kind of make a nose. So if you want that to be visible, go ahead and make sure that that is on the top part. So it's flipped it around. Peyton had it the other way. So it's flipped it around. Does that look okay? Is that where you want it? Okay. Alright, so we're going to pin that. The other thing I want to keep in mind is we will be sewing the edges either with a running stitch or a whip stitch. So you don't want to make it too close to the edge. Give yourself at least 1/4 of an inch on all the sides, okay, so that you're not sewing over top of it. But she has her position, Braylon has hers position. Now what you're going to do, in your kit there is a thread that matches pretty close anyway to the color of your cutout. So go ahead and get that thread. And with this, you could do a running stitch or a back stitch. For the samples we did a running stitch, so that worked out well, but if you want to, you know, get a little bit more creative, go ahead. Cut that off. So should be enough on your spool there. So we're going to go ahead and just knot one end of it and thread the other, and we'll get started. So now Peyton, do you want to do a running stitch? Yes, probably what I would do. Okay, so she is just going to pick a spot where she wants to get started. I would probably maybe pick one of these straighter areas just so I can get started, but wherever you want, you're going to start from the back. I'm going to start right up there. Okay, so we're going to start, I'm going to poke it from the back and pull it up. And I'm going to actually switch views really quick so you can kind of see this a little. Okay, so I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a closer view for the running stitch. I'm just going to pull it until the knot stops, so the knot reaches the back. And we're just going to come over and decide how long you want it. I like to do it about 1/4 of an inch. I'm just going to pull it. Sometimes if you have a pin in there, the string might kind of try to wrap around it. Okay, so now whatever, with the running stitch, whatever end or side, I guess, whatever side your string is coming out, that's where the needle is going to point through, okay? So now, since the string is coming out the back, the needle needs to poke through the back. Now, one thing that my daughter likes to do is she likes to kind of decide, like, go to the front and poke a hole, and then when she goes to flip it around, she can see that hole right there. Oops. Sorry. So she's going to poke, you're going to poke your hole, and you can turn it around and see where that hole is at, right there. And then you can come up and be right on, okay? And then now the string is coming out the front side, so this one's easy. You can just poke it down where you want, okay? Sometimes it's just a matter of kind of guessing where you want the string to come up. And just kind of keep going. So you're going to keep going all the way around. When you get to these smaller details, you might need to do smaller stitches, but just kind of work around until you get back to where you started. To take a quick look of Braylon's llama, she started up on the head just because she wanted to get the ears out of the way. And we just did little stitches just to kind of keep the head down. Okay? Okay, so Peyton and Braylon have stitched the llama and the puppy. Okay, so now it's time to add the accents. So for the llama, we're going to first do the little saddle. So it's a pretty small piece. Now, I recommend keeping the pieces safe off to the side because they are pretty small. But what we're going to do is just pin it in place. So we're just going to line up right up to the top of that. And we'll grab a little pin, which Braylon did. So I'll have her kind of pin that in place, and we're going to use, now there's different ways that you can do this. You could add a decoration, like you could do a decorative stitch. You could do like really small running stitches, so it almost looks like it's like polka dots. Or in our sample, we just did long stitches, so it kind of looked like stripes. You could do little X's, or you could just stitch around the perimeter of it. You can decide how you want to do it. I don't know if Braylon knows yet or not, but we'll let her think about that. And then for the puppy, we're going to start with the little tiny ear, okay? And she's going to position that on how she wants it. We're going to use black thread for that. I would probably just use a running stitch for that. Now you do have the choice when it comes to your thread. You can use the thread just like what we have been doing, or you can make it thinner since it's a smaller spot. So just to show you, I'm going to show you what I mean by making the thread thinner. So the embroidery thread is 6 strands of thread, okay? So when we cut it, you can kind of separate it and see. So sometimes when we're sewing things, it's easier if it's thinner pieces of thread, so you can separate it in half. So I can find 3 pieces of thread and just start to split it. Now when we start to split it, sometimes it works really well, sometimes it kind of gets knotted. So sometimes we kind of just have to be patient with it and kind of just work it down. It's not uncommon because it's kind of twisted together, so it's not uncommon for it to get knotted, so sometimes you just have to work it down. But now you have a thinner piece of thread, and this can be easier to work with when you have smaller spots, smaller areas, okay? So for this one, is just going to work with the 3 pieces of thread since the ear is kind of small. Like I said, it's going to be totally up to you. This also can be useful if you go to sew the llama's mouth. There's marker on the llama's mouth, so if you wanted to stitch over that marker, I would recommend using 3 strands instead of 6, okay? Alright, a little gen rant there, sorry. But what we're going to do now, we're working with just 3 strands instead of 6. We're going to knot this just like what we did before. Everything else will be the same as what we've done in the past. So, Peyton, do you have your ear pinned how you want it to be? Or position? And give her a pin. And then, Braylon, do you know what you're going to do for your saddle?
Polka dots.
Polka dots, alright. So you just want to do like little running stitches? And for that, I would just do it kind of randomly. Like, you don't have to do it right up to the edge because it's pretty small, so it'll stay in place. Okay, so she's just going to do, she has it pinned on there, so she's just going to do random little, like, small running stitches throughout. So when she's done, I'll make sure to show you the back of that as well so you can see what that looks like, okay? So she's going to knot up her pink thread. Do you want to do pink or do you want to do like an accent so it looks different? You want to do pink? Okay. It's a slightly different pink, so it will look cool. Alright, so Peyton is ready. She has her ear in place. For the ear, if it were me, I would definitely just stick with black, but if you wanted to add little polka dots or something, you could use the brown color too, I guess. I mean, it's your design, you get to do what you want, right? So for this, I would just recommend doing a running stitch along the outside of the ear, okay? So if you want to go ahead, we'll just start it maybe at the top corner. If you want to just do a running stitch around that. And then we'll let Braylon do her polka dots and we'll check back when they're done. So they have stitched the ear on the puppy and the saddle on the llama, so you can see. Peyton's are hard to see because she just did that thinner black thread. And then the llama kind of has little pink polka dots. Isn't that cute? Okay, and then I was going to show you, so the back of the llama, it just is kind of like a nest of threads because she just kind of went at random, just little stitches. So that's fine, no one's going to see the back. The top is what's going to matter. Alright, so now it's time for our small little parts. So in your kit you have this teeny tiny little circle that has kind of a nose and a mouth drawn on it already, okay? So we're going to position that, and then we'll go ahead and position that real quick, and then we'll do the eyes. But so the llama mouth is going to drop down kind of low, and then you'll put the 2 eyes up there. And then for the dog collar, that's the small piece for the dog. It's just a little sliver, and that's going to go on the neck, okay? Now, you have the option, you can use the thread that's included and you can stitch that on. So for the llama, like I said, you could split the black thread and kind of just do a thin like running stitch or back stitch along the outline of the mouth. Or what we're going to use is we're going to use some glue, okay? So I do have this available, so you may have bought this from me or you may have it at home. You could also use hot glue, to be honest, just a dot of hot glue. There's other fabric glues. Just look on the back of it and see if it says anything about not using it on felt. I do have one that I tried that said not to use it on felt, and I tried and it didn't work. So this one works good. So we're going to go ahead and Braylon can position it how she wants, and just make sure that you are paying attention to the direction of the nose, and just put glue onto the back of that and then position it how you want on there. And then the same thing for the collar. I have seen people do kind of like, you know how Braylon did those small little polka dot type things? You could do that on the collar too. I think Peyton wanted to use glue though. So we're going to use glue on hers and glue that in place. Now with that note, if you do have glue, you could also glue the saddle or the ear on, kind of up to you. We like to use the hand stitching when we can, but when it gets pretty small, it's a little easier to use the glue. So we're going to glue those in place, and then the next thing that we're going to do is the eye. So with the eye, we're going to use a French knot. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Another option though would be to do like a running stitch or just kind of, you know, like small little running stitches up and down the same spot. So we'll go ahead and get that going. Peyton, if you want to put some glue onto your collar, and we'll get that positioned, and then we'll, while you're doing that, get Braylon's black thread ready for her. This is probably Peyton's, I think hers is sitting over there, but it doesn't matter. Black thread ready for the eye, for the llama. So we're just going to want to do 2 eyes.
Yes.
For the puppy, you only need to do 1. The other thing, as I'm knotting this, for the puppy, I drew in a black nose already, but you could also stitch over that if you wanted to. Just kind of depends on how much stitching you want to do. So Peyton got her collar on. Flip that a little bit. Let that dry. Alright, so Braylon, you could have knotted this. I don't know why I felt the need to do it, but if you want to go ahead and thread that, and then we'll get Peyton's going for hers. They have their little details glued on, and we have our thread ready to go for the French knot. Now I will note, it is usually best to maybe do the glue last, but it's harder to see like the position for the eyes. So I am going to grab a tiny little pin that I'm going to weave in here to kind of keep the nose piece in place while we are sewing the eye. And if it becomes loose, it's not a big deal, we'll just go back and add more thread. Like I said, it's kind of, so now it looks really funny, but I just kind of put a pin through there just to kind of keep it in place. Now, Braylon has not done a French knot before, and Peyton either, so they're going to learn right along with you guys, okay? So first, Braylon, what I want you to do is take your pin, and I want you to position, go from the back up to the position of where you want that eye, and same thing, Peyton, I'm going to have you go from the back, so she's going to go from the back side up to where you want the eye, okay? Do you have an idea where you want it?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Alright, so for this next part, we are going to switch camera views. Okay, so we have pulled the thread from the back to the front. And what we're going to do, position the needle so that it's going away from the hole, away from where you pulled the thread through. We're going to wrap it around your needle a few times, okay? Depending on the size of your knot, you might want to wrap it around more or less. I did it about 2 or 3 times. And now at this point, I'm holding onto that thread that I wrapped around. I'm going to poke the needle next to where the thread had come out. And I'm still holding onto that thread with my left hand, and I'm pulling the needle through on my right. I'm just going to keep it pulled, pull it, and then once it gets close to the edge, I'm going to let go. I'm just going to pull through and make a knot. Okay? Now, Braylon's going to go ahead and do her side. Okay, so now Braylon's going to give it a try. Now this is kind of tricky, so I would recommend, let's make that string a little shorter. I would recommend practicing this on scrap fabric first. But she's holding it, the string off on the left side, wrapping her needle around, and bringing it next to where the thread is coming out. She's going to poke through, using her right hand. She's going to reach under and pull it, and she's holding the string with her left hand the whole time. She's going to start to pull it, and perfect, you did it. I'm just going to kind of pull that a little tighter, see if you can. There you go. The llama has 2 eyes. Good job, Braylon. We did the French knots. I went ahead and did Peyton's French knot because French knotting is pretty, it's kind of takes some practice. So if you do not have someone that's older than you that can do it, or if you just, if you can't figure it out yourself, just do a running knot. Just do small little running knots right there. That totally works too. But either way, you do want to remember to knot off the back of it, okay? Because you don't want the eye to come off. So Braylon already did that on her, so she's going to cut the string. And I would knot off the back of this. Alright. Now the next part is going to be to add the button. Okay, so we're getting close. Up to this point, you've kind of just been able to be creative and just kind of make it your own. So this project, like for Everly, it took her a long time. Took her 3 or 4 days. These girls are just doing it kind of in one set. But so we have the puppy here. I did put a little pin just kind of securing that collar in place. But the next thing we're going to do is we are going to position the button. So what I would recommend doing at this point, just to kind of get an idea, is maybe lay the pieces together. So I have Peyton's here, so this pink is her inside, right? We have the hearts right there. I'm just going to kind of lay it all together so I can get an idea of where I'm going to want the button to be placed, like how far down. So once you're going to flap that over, it's going to look like this, okay? So to put colored pencils in there, you might want to kind of put the button, you know, kind of closer to the top, so that way you can have it longer. Okay, so kind of depending again on how far down you want that button to go, how overlapped you want it to be. You also could, which I didn't mention this, you could also trim this shorter if you wanted, you know, a smaller pouch. Maybe you wanted it, you know, come down smaller so that you could use it for sunglasses or something. So you can cut the top of it to make it a little shorter if you wanted to. But what we're going to do is just, first we're going to find the middle. So I'm going to fold this in half. And I'm going to mark the middle. So we're working with the smaller piece. So for Peyton, it's the piece with her dog on it. For Braylon, it would be the piece with her llama. And I'm just putting a pin right through the middle. This is how I like to mark the middle of my project. Okay, so I fold it in half and just put a pin right there in the middle. Now Peyton has her button. And she has this cute little decorative button. So we're going to center it and towards the top. I'm going to center it with that pin. I'm going to put it up there kind of towards the top. Okay. Now what I like to do at this point is grab some tape to kind of tape it in place because buttons get kind of slippery and they slide around a lot. So we're just going to put some tape on there. We have some thread and things stuck on it, but put tape on here. Tape on it, and then once we tape it, sometimes when they're pretty bulky buttons, it's not quite enough. So a little trick: take some pins and pin the tape in place. Didn't think you'd see that, did you? Okay, so what I did is I taped it in place and I put 2 pins just right next to it to kind of keep it from sliding around. So that way I know it's going to stay centered. Okay, so we're going to grab her thread that she wants to do for that. Braylon has hers positioned as well right there. So we're going to do the same thing and put the tape over it. I'll let her do that. And then Peyton, do you know what thread you want to use? You want to do black? Perfect. Alright, now I also would recommend, I like to use, with the buttons, the needle I'm sending you is big enough. If you wanted to use a different button that you had at home or anything like that, just make sure your needle fits through the hole, the eye of the button. You could also use just sewing machine thread. You don't have to use embroidery floss, I can't say it. You don't have to use that. You can use, you know, thread that you have at home too. We just have this on hand, right? It came in your kit, so we can go ahead and use it. Alright, so I went ahead and knotted that. I have it threaded. So now we're going to start from the bottom and poke up through the holes. This is a little bit harder to see because I put all that tape on there, but once I get it started, you can see it. So, I might have to take a peek. I can't see it very well. Okay, perfect. The clearer the tape, the better. We just had kind of bulky tape. But we're going to go through it. Now, Peyton had 4 holes on yours, right? Okay, so we're going to start getting it sewn. And then I'm going to take this tape off because it is pretty hard to see through, right? So, but once I get a couple of stitches in place, then it's fine. So I just took the pins away and I'm just going to take the tape off. So depending on how well you can see the holes, you might keep it on there longer. So let's take that off to the side. So you can see that I, goodness sakes, was able to get a couple of stitches through there. So now what Peyton's going to do is she's just going to keep going, going through the holes here and just kind of go through it when we made our other one, I think we went through it like 4 times on each side. Keep in mind, we're using thicker thread, so we don't have to do it as much, okay? So Braylon over here, she is just putting the pins in place to keep her tape from sliding. And she already has her needle and thread ready, so she only has 2 holes in hers, so she just needs to go back and forth a few times on those 2 holes. Again, remember to start from the back, so the knot for the string is hidden in the back and you don't see it from the front. Okay, so we have done the button, and I went ahead and knotted the back of it. I keep grabbing Peyton's, and Peyton's is harder to see, but I'm going to, because hers is a darker color. It's one of my favorite colors, but it's darker. Okay, open that. Alright, and then Braylon did hers as well. So we can go ahead, she left the tape on the whole time because she could see her hole easier than Peyton and I could. So we'll get rid of that tape, just kind of peel it off. Goodness. Okay, so then that's Braylon's, okay? So now, we have the button, we have the design. Now it's time to put it all together. Okay, so what you're going to do is move all the tape. Just kidding. Okay, so what you're going to do is start with the big pieces. So we have the big piece where her words are written, and then we have the lining piece, okay? I want you guys to stack that so that the wrong side, so the side that where all the back stitching and stuff is at, not back stitching, but where all the, not the front, right? The back, we're going to hide it with the lining. So we're going to put those 2 together so it's wrong side together, basically. We're going to stack that up. Now at this point, I'm going to check it to see how well the pieces were cut. Good chance that you might have to trim it up a little bit because they are not cut together. So we're just going to kind of lay them on top of each other. And then you're going to lay it so that you're looking at the lining, okay? And you're going to take the smaller piece and lay it right on top of the lining. So now what you have done is you have sandwiched the lining in between the 2 main pieces. But you still see the curve here, like that, okay? Because what we're going to be doing is folding that over like this, okay? So go ahead, Braylon, this one's yours. We're going to grab some pins. I want you to pin it together all the way around, because we're just going to do one big whip stitch all the way around. So check on Peyton over here. I'm going to lay it so that the lining piece. Now I can see I need to trim hers up a little bit, so I'm going to do that now. And the best thing to do will be to pin it in place, so it doesn't slip or slide while you are cutting it. Okay. So go ahead and we're just going to trim the pink off so that it matches up with the purple better. Alright, so that is all lined up. We're going to take the puppy, and at this point, I still have the pin in there. I took the pin out of Braylon's. I could probably take it away, but we can leave it in there since it's not really hurting anything, right? So now the pink is sandwiched in between. Okay, so Peyton, go ahead and put a couple of pins in that front pocket piece. Alright, so now what it's time for is we are going to be sewing all the way around. So you can see Braylon did a great job pinning it. You don't necessarily have to put this many pins in, but it's fine if you do. You can decide if you're going to do a running stitch all the way around on the edge, or you can do a whip stitch.
I'm going to do whip stitch.
Whip stitch. Whip stitch is kind of my preferred method for this. You could also do a back stitch, I suppose, kind of whatever you want to do, but I would probably, like, if I were doing it, I'd probably just do a whip stitch all the way around the edge there. So we'll get that started. Peyton's getting that. Alright, so we'll get our needles ready real quick. Guest appearance really quick from Miss Everly, right? Alright, so Everly's going to show hers really quick, your llama. And what did you do on the outside of it?
Whip stitch.
Yeah, so she did a whip stitch all the way around. Okay, now there are a few times where we did like an accidental running stitch, but we decided we were just going to own it, right? Just own it. But so that's what it would look like though, all the way around if you did a running stitch. But she did a whip stitch. We love it. Alright, so do you have yours knotted yet?
Yes.
Alright.
It's very long because whip stitch takes extra.
Yes, that's a good point. So Braylon can slide in here a little better here. So whip stitch takes, what did you say?
It takes a lot of thread because you're going like next to it.
Yep. So, how long do we make it?
Very long.
We probably don't want to make it quite that long. I think we're gonna end it like right here. And maybe we'll have to add more. The problem is if we make it too long, we're gonna be like, oh, after every stitch. And there's more chance that it will get knotted if we do that too.
Keep it there too.
So yeah, just make sure you keep it off to the side. We still did it pretty long because it is kind of a long distance to go around. So we'll go ahead and knot this one more time. Alright. Now, a little thing that I want you guys to pay attention to, especially if you're sewing it the way that I'm doing it with just one thread, I have this tail part kind of long here. So every once in a while you're going to check it to make sure it's not getting sewn in there, that you're not sewing 2 strands instead of 1. So kind of every once in a while you're going to need to shorten it up a little bit. Alright, so if it were me, I would start, well, she's doing it with me, so she's going to do what I want to do, but I would start right by where this pocket is at, okay? And we're just going to grab this top layer, this pocket piece, and just go ahead and put your stitch through the top corner of that and pull it until the knot stops.
Yay. But if you don't want to do it on the back, because then you'll see the knot.
Yep, so we're on a good point. We're trying to hide the knot, so we're just going to do it through one layer so the knot can hang out. Now at this point, she's going to sew it. Do you want to go up around the top first or around the bottom first?
Around the bottom.
Okay, so it's going to go around the bottom, so we're going to go through all 3 layers. Right? Everly's the queen of whip stitches, aren't you? Yeah. And I'm already enough right out. We have a long string. So she's just going to continue to wrap all the way around, and we'll show you in a different view in just a moment, but I'll let her get going here with that, and we will check on Miss Peyton. Alright. Evie, you want to say bye? No. We'll see if she wants to stay in a second, but I'm going to show you the whip stitch, okay? Okay, so I'm going to try to show you a better view of the whip stitch. So we have, rotate the pocket side. I'm going to just go through the one layer of the pocket. Kind of pull it through so the knot is on the back of that. And just put that down. I'm going to try to hide that string inside of there. And now I'm just going to do my whip stitch. So when I'm doing the whip stitch, I'm always going to be poking my needle through the same side, okay? And when I'm doing the pocket, especially, I like to grab that corner as much as I can. That's why I like to start by the pocket. Okay, space it out even, and then just keep going. Try to keep it the same distance if possible. No matter what, it's going to look amazing. But you can see, I'm going to keep going all the way around. So every time, I'm going to be poking my needle on the opposite side that the thread is currently coming out of. So right now the thread is coming out of the pink side. I'm always going to wrap it around to the purple. And I'm going to stop right here so that Peyton can take over. So I'm going to show you just a couple of things really quick. So Peyton has sewn hers all the way up to here, and we didn't make her thread as long as Braylon did. So she is starting to run out of thread, and she's not going to be able to make it all the way to the end. So just to kind of show you what I do for this instance when we're working with a whip stitch, I'm going to equip this just because it's very frayed. So her needle was off already, so I'm going to rethread it. And what I want to do, I'm going to rethread it, and I want to only poke it through one layer. Now actually before I even do that, I've noticed that this has gotten off. It's just shifted a little bit as it's been sewn, so it's not, the 3 layers are not even. This layer is longer. I'm going to go ahead and trim that really quick. Best part about felt is that I can trim this and not worry about anything fraying. We just kind of make it how we want it to look. Okay, so I trimmed that up. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just poke this through this one layer. And we're just going to go back through here. And we're going to knot it, okay? So I'm going to knot it with another piece of thread. So I'm going to take another length of this off. Braylon is just ready. She has done hers all the way. She's just going to show us another knotting situation. So she's just waiting patiently. I'm just knotting it now. I'm taking the two pieces of thread and I'm knotting them together. I'm knotting it kind of as if I was knotting my shoestring, okay? So I'm just knotting it, but I'm going to keep the knot hidden in between those three layers. So once again, I'm just going to knot it to secure it. Okay, so now we can trim the tails that are hanging off, but you don't want to trim it too short, because if you trim it too short, then the knot might slip undone. So I'm still going to leave, you know, maybe like a 1/2 inch or so of a knot. And what we're going to do is tuck that inside, rethread the needle again. Maybe. There you go. Okay. So I'm rethreading the needle. So now the knot is hidden in between those layers. I'm just going to kind of hide that and just continue on doing a whip stitch, kind of like how we started it in the beginning. And just kind of work again to keep those knots, or not those knots, the tails kind of hidden. And now Peyton can continue doing her whip stitch around. Braylon, so she actually, it ended up working out where she had the perfect amount of string, which is awesome, but it's really, really short. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna loop this. I'm going to knot it as if I was knotting, you know, the end of the string at the beginning. Just gonna loop it around my fingers. It is too short to do our traditional method with the needle on it already. Oh my goodness, it's very frayed. Yeah. All right, let me try one more time. Okay, it's too short to do that. So, what I'm going to do is split up. Remember how there's 6 strands of thread in the embroidery floss? I'm going to split them apart, and we're just going to knot it while we're tying our shoe. Okay, so I have tied those 6 strands, 3 on each side. I tied them in a knot. Now what we're going to do to get rid of the tails, because the tails are just kind of sticking out there, I'm going to take my needle, and it's not threaded, there's no thread on here. We're just going to poke it through, and I kind of just like to go through like half of the layer of the felt. Since the felt is so thick, it's pretty easy to do. And I might even... Alright. I'm just going to kind of poke it through here. Now I'm going to move this down so that the eye of the needle is closer to the edge. Now at this point, I'm going to get my thread and kind of get it to be friends with each other again, kind of get twisted into one piece of thread again. We're going to thread, actually I might just do it separately because it does not want to be friends again. We're going to put it through the eye of the needle and then you can pull it through, okay? Gotta use our spit sometimes. Alright, so now you can see there's just a little bit of it sticking out. I'm going to pull it through. Sometimes I kind of have to just force it. Alright, so now I'll put that off this side. Now you can see it. I've pulled it through. So now we can cut it short to stay close to the edge, okay? Alright, so now hers is done. We just need to do our buttonhole. Okay guys, we are here, day 3 of filming this project.
This won't take you this long. We just have a very busy schedule.
Yeah, we'll see if you can, tell me if you can do it faster than us. Just kidding. You know what though? It did take Everly like a week too.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. It's kind of a project that can get dragged out and it's fun. Take your time. No rush, right? Okay, so Braylon has hers, actually kind of skipped ahead with hers a little bit, so don't pay attention to hers right now. We're going to pay attention to Peyton's. So Peyton has finished doing her whip stitch. We are going to knot this off. I'm going to go through one layer. So she has her last stitch in place. I'm going to go through just one layer. We'll go back right there. Because we want to do a knot, okay? And I want to kind of hide the knot as much as we can. So we'll go ahead and knot this off. I'm just going to grab a tiny little bit of fabric on the side there. And we'll do the knot the same way that we usually do, where we do the loop. Oops. I'm going to do a loop and set it through. And I'm going to do it a couple of times, and then we'll hide the tail. So I'm going to just keep knotting in the same spot. Do my loop. Alright, and I actually think I'm going to break my usual rule. I'm only going to do 2 this time. I'm a rebel. I still want to get the knot too big because it's still is a little bit visible, yeah. So I'm just going to kind of take it through the side here, pull it tight, and then we will cut it. Cut it off to the side there. Now she has this little string here from the beginning. I'm going to trim that. Okay. So now we have, this has been all wrapped around. We did the whip stitch all the way around. Alright, so now it's time to do our button. So I have already done one step of braylons, so I'm going to show you how I did it. But basically what we will be doing is cutting a slit into that top flat so that we can put the button through. We will go ahead and stitch this, kind of protect it with a whip stitch around it, but first I'm going to show you how to figure out how long you want the button to be. So I am going to change views for this so that you can see it a little bit better, okay? Okay, so now we need to figure out the size of the button. So I'm going to use my seam gauge here to measure the width of the button, okay? So I'm going to measure it from the side to side at the biggest spot, and it looks like it's just under 1 inch for this particular button, okay? So what we need to do is cut a 1 inch line right up here at the top, okay? So first we do want to center it, and I'll be honest, there's different ways that you can do this. We could use some chalk and mark it onto the button and push it, and then you can kind of see where it's at. Or if you trust that everything's centered, you can just fold it in half and mark the center of the flap thing with the pin, and open it up, and then center it that way. So I have these 2 lines right here, if you can see them, from the chalk that I put onto the buttons. I know it's right there. What we're going to do is just connect those lines. I'm going to use a piece of chalk to mark it, and I'm doing it on the lighter side because it's easier for me to see. I might even go to use a marker because it's the light pink. So you could do this on either side, either the lining side or the main side. This one is dark, remember, so it's a little harder to see on the main side. So I'm going to do the pink. It is still pretty hard to see, but I can see it enough, I think, to cut it. So hopefully you can see it too. Now I do want to pay special attention to the end points of that. So I will take a pin, put a pin in to mark my end points. Okay? So I want to basically, I will be cutting, you can see that line right there. We're going to be cutting that just with our scissors. We're just going to cut a little hole. So I will fold it in half. I'm going to grab my scissors, cut right on the line. And first I just need to make a small slit so that way I can open it up. It's easiest if I can cut through both layers at the same time. I got through both of them, and now I'm just going to cut from one pin to the other. Okay. I take those pins out, and I'm going to test it to see, maybe I might need to make it a little bit bigger. I'm just going to kind of test it out. Oh, I think that actually looks perfect. So now I will show you how to do we're going to basically just do a whip stitch around the buttonhole to secure it, to keep it from getting ripped or stretched out further. So we'll do that, and then you'll be all done. Okay, so we have the hole cut, so now it's time to just do a whip stitch around the hole. So we're going to start it in a very similar way where we will just start going through one layer so that way the knot will be hidden. Okay, so I'm going to start by just going through just the pink so I can tuck the knot in between the two layers. Okay. And then Braylon is threading hers over there. So she's not ignoring us, she's just threading hers. But now we're just going to do a whip stitch. Now this can get a little bit tricky because you don't have a very big space to work with. So what I have found the easiest, if you want to be accurate and neat, you're going to take your pin, you're going to pull it all the way through the hole, and then just find your spot that you want to take it down. Okay? So you're doing the whip stitch. So for this whatever, for this case, we're going to always be poking the needle, pushing through on the purple side, going to the pink, okay? So right now my string is on the pink side. I'm going to stick my needle through that hole once again, okay? And then I'm just going to push it right next. So we are what they call this binding the buttonhole, okay? We are just kind of reinforcing that buttonhole so it doesn't get stretched out or ripped or anything, to keep it secure so it will be able to button your pouch securely. Okay, so again I just kind of pulled it all the way through. I'm going to pass this on to Peyton. You guys will see I am not a perfect hand stitcher by any means. I'm going to pull it all the way to the purple side and then just decide where I want my stitch. Alright, and then just work your way all the way around, and then once you get back to where you started you can tie a knot. Alright Peyton, can I take over? I think you can make it look prettier than me. Alright, so Braylon's going to get her started, so let's just start right here. And tuck. Woo! We're going to tuck her knot in between the two layers. Not going to make your knot. It's alright, it's going to be hidden, right? Yes. So now you're going to slide the needle through the hole all the way, look on this side, and just look on this front side, decide where we want the hole, and just poke it through. Sometimes the needle or the thread kind of gets into a little bunch or a little knot, so you just kind of usually work it out with your fingers and before you come unthreaded. Okay. Alright, we're going to let those girls finish this up, and they'll be done. Okay, so they have gone ahead, I'll show Braylon because she has the contraster. So she went ahead and she did her whip stitch all around the button. So now we're just going to go, through, I'm just going to go through the top here. Just going to do a little finishing knot. Oops. I pulled it through too far. But we're just going to do a finishing knot right here. Just going to do, I just do two again, and then we'll pull it through to try to hide the knot. But I'm doing it on the inside, which is what I would recommend, so that way you don't really see it. Now the great part about all of this is the button kind of hides it anyway. So I have that little knot right there. I'm just going to take my needle and pull it through. And we'll cut that string.